has this election split America wide open? And before we come to our panelists on the round table, I want to play some sound bites that we have from what's been happening in America. More recently, comments made at a Trump rally in New York targeting Puerto Ricans, response from Biden, how Kamala Harris and Trump have been targeting each other. Just listen in to how it's being playing out in America.
Remember Hillary, she said deplorable, and then she said irredeemable, right? But she said deplorable, that didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right? But he doesn't know, you have to please forgive him. Please forgive him, for he not knoweth what he said. These people, it's terrible, terrible. Terrible to say a thing like that, but he really doesn't know. He really, honestly, he doesn't. And I'm convinced that he likes me more than he likes Kamala. Convinced. And I'm so proud that we're getting support from Latinos like never before. We're setting every record. Hispanics, Latinos. Nobody loves our Latino community and our Puerto Rican community more than I do. Nobody. You know, it's interesting because I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president by far. Nobody close. I provided historic funding and the hospital ship when they were hit with a couple of really bad ones right in the road. We got the ship over there with thousands of rooms, actually. It was amazing. A floating hospital, the biggest in the world. I will deliver the best future for Puerto Ricans and for Hispanic Americans.
Oh, the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done.
We have to stop pointing fingers and start locking arms. It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and division. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next President of the United States of America.
Irfan Nuruddin, Puerto Rico, of course, the latest conflict point. A comedian at a Trump rally saying island of garbage, and then you saw the responses to that. Is this election right to the very end about polarization, about demonization, about anti-immigrant rhetoric? And does that help Trump? Because he has split America wide open.
Yeah, he's split America wide open, but he's also just exposed faults that those of us who pay attention to American politics could recognize over the last 100 years, right? I mean, the Republican strategy in the 1960s came to be called the Southern strategy, and that was about focusing on white grievances in what was the American South, the once slaveholding states. That has now become dominant. The biggest cleavage in American politics are twofold. One is gender, which is growing as more women of all age groups, and particularly young women, gravitate to the Democratic Party. But the second is race, the single biggest predictor of support, in terms of splits, is white people are more likely to support Mr. Trump, and everyone else is more likely to support Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris. So these are real divisions. The Trump campaign has been uglier than any that I can recall. I've been in the United States since 1992, right? My very first year in America as a college first-year student was the Bill Clinton, George Bush election. There's never been anything like this in terms of the ugliness of the rhetoric engaged. You know, we're talking right now about Puerto Rico, but 2 weeks ago we were talking about allegations made that Haitian immigrants to Springfield, Ohio were eating cats and dogs and stealing their neighbors' pets. So this is a constant theme. And remember that 8 years ago, Trump referred to Mexicans as rapists and murderers who come across the border to do harm. So this is very much the theme. If you look at the ad buy of the Republican Party in the last week, and including what they've sort of invested in terms of advertisements going forward, it's a heavily antagonistic, anti-trans, people's rights. There's this constant demonization of difference and of others. So it is very polarizing. It is very split apart. It is also an election that is fundamentally about party loyalty and party identity. At the end of the day, there are going to be crossover votes. There always are. The question is how many Republicans cross over to Kamala Harris, because while they remain Republicans, do not identify Mr. Trump's version of republicanism with the party that they grew up with. But for many others, the fundamental choice is between a Republican candidate and a Democratic candidate, and we're going to go there. And so Trump ends up being a candidate who cannot be dismissed because he's got a very high floor, right? There's about 45% of the American public, 43 to 45% that's going to support him. He potentially has a very low ceiling of about 47 to 48% in any poll, right? He's not cracked 49, he's not cracked 50%. So this final week is going to be about turnout and the enthusiasm for the Trump campaign versus the enthusiasm for the Harris campaign is what's going to determine this election.
Right.
But as you point out, because of the nature of their rhetoric, right, on the one hand, this ugly racist campaign that the Republicans have waged against an increasingly confrontational rhetoric on the part of the Democrats, a willingness to call him a fascist, to say that there are elements of the campaign that are outrightly dangerous for democracy, means that the wounds coming out of this election are going to be pretty raw. No one expects Trump to concede the election if he loses, right? We expect there to be a lot of, just like in 2020, a lot of ugly rhetoric, threats of violence, election law cases, etc. So this is going to drag on for a while. And so regardless of outcome, right, if Kamala Harris wins, she's going to be saying, let's turn the page, but we expect the Trump campaign to continue to fan the flames. Of course, if the Trump campaign comes out victorious, I don't think Harris plays the same playbook, but I imagine that for a large number of the people, the post-trauma of 2016 when Hillary lost will be doubly repaid. And so, this is not an election that people are going to move past very quickly. And yet there is one outcome that I think is much more conducive to some sort of healing and democratic resilience than the other.
Jayant Krishna, do you believe also that this election has split America wide open like never before?
Yeah, it seems like, but the outcome is still very is anybody's guess, quite unpredictable. Earlier Kamala Harris, as we all know, had taken a lead, but now the latest poll says that Trump has a lead of 2% over Kamala Harris. It has divided. It has been a pretty not a very positive campaign the way you look at. If you go beyond people and look at business, I think despite the fact that Trump is known to be, quite pro-American business, but more if you go by the fundraising, Kamala Harris has been able to raise more funds than Trump, which if you translate that, it does mean that more business supports Kamala Harris to come to power rather than Trump. Some of the things, Rajdeep, which Trump has announced, it gives me some concern at this point of time, purely from an American economy point of view. He said that across the board he'll increase import tariffs to protect the domestic industry so that their products are preferred over the imported ones. But if you look at while it may help the domestic industry to a limited extent, not to an extent he has talked about in his campaign, the fact is higher import duty would lead to higher prices. It would lead to my worry is the inflation, which has been controlled somewhat in the last couple of years, and Fed has a target for 2%, the inflation target for 2%. My worry is how would it, how inflation would definitely go up if these import duty proposals of Trump see the light of the day, and if he comes to power.
Okay.
Now there is one more worry on the economy front. If you compare and contrast the economic proposals of Trump and Harris, Trump proposals are likely to lead to a higher government borrowing. And in government borrowings, typically, we have seen all over the world what happens if the volume goes up, scale goes up, it becomes riskier to invest in government securities. Then the rate of interest on government security goes up, which is, I'm told, around 4.25% at this point of time. So higher rate of interest for government securities would mean that government would have to spend more to service those debts? So I think these are the kind of questions that I have, and generally American business also has is looking at about the Fed Reserve, that what their next move would be, and whether they will maintain the high rate of rates for longer than it is expected. So I think these are some of the issues more on the business side and less on the people side in the US between the two leaders.